Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This time's lecture is entitled Active and Passive Voice. So the main difference between the active voice and the passive voice is that the active voice describes the action in a direct manner. However, the passive voice describes the action from the perspective of what is done to the subject. And this is why the active voice tells us what a person or a thing does, which is the subject, and it describes how the subject performs the action on the verb. However, the passive voice tells us what is done to someone or to something. That means what is acted upon the subject, or how the subject is acted upon. So to compare it to Arabic, we can say that in the active voice, the subject or the subject يأخذ صيغة الفاعل. However, in the passive voice, the subject يأخذ صيغة المفعول به. So the main difference between the active and the passive voice is that in their structure, the active voice comes in the form of subject plus verb plus object. For example, I eat an apple. I, which is the subject, eat, which is the verb, and apple is the object. The form of the passive form, or the passive voice, however, comes in object plus verb plus subject. For example, if we transform the earlier sentence to the passive voice, an apple is eaten by me. This would be the form of it. Object plus verb plus subject. So now, to explain the rules of conversion, or how to converse from the active voice to the passive voice, we have to know that there are this conversion can happen in multiple tenses, for example, in the present simple, or in the past simple, or in the present continuous. So I'm going to see the other tenses later on. Right now we're going to focus on the present simple, how to transform a sentence in the present simple from the active voice to the passive voice. So the rules of the transformation are simple. In the present simple, we have the subject and then the verb in the present simple, and then the object. For example, the teacher asks a question. When we try to transform this sentence, for example, in the passive voice, we will start with the object, and then we will add to be after it, and then plus we will add the past participle of the main verb, and then we will end with by and the subject. So if the sentence in the active form is the teacher asks a question, in the passive voice it will be the question is asked by the teacher. So when we transform a sentence from the active voice to the passive voice, the first thing we do is we transform the subject into the object, and the object into the subject. Or in the present, in the active voice, we start with the subject, and in the passive voice, we start with the object. In the active voice, we end with the object. However, in the passive voice, we end with the subject. which means the subject takes the place of the object, and the object takes the place of the subject. As we can see in this example, the teacher is, which is the subject, is in the beginning of the sentence in the active voice. However, the teacher is in the end of the sentence in the passive form. And then the second thing to do is to look at the main verb in the active form. Here the main verb is the verb to ask, and it is in the present simple. The teacher asks a question. Asks is in the present simple. So you look at the main verb, and then when you transform the sentence into the passive form, what you do is that you start with the object, not that means you don't start with the teacher, but you start with the question. So you say the question is, or a question, and then you add to be and past participle. So this is the main form of all the passive voice. It is to be plus past participle. And then what you do is you look at the main verb. Here the main verb in the active form. The main verb in the active form here is asks. It is in the present simple. You look at its tense. You use the verb to be in the passive form in the same tense that is in that the main verb is in the active form. So for example, here the main verb in the active form is asks, and it is in the present simple. So when we transform this sentence in the passive form, we have object plus to be plus participle. So that to be will be also in the present simple. So if the word asks is in the present simple, to be is also going to be in the present simple. Somehow that to be is copied from or is of the same nature or in the same tense as the verb to asks, or the verb asks. And then you add to that the past participle of that verb. That means if the verb is to ask, its past participle is asked. So what are you going to obtain is the question is asked, and then the last step is you add by the doer or the subject, by the teacher. So the teacher asks a question. A question is asked by the teacher. So in an overall manner, we look at the main verb in order to transform from the active voice to the passive voice. We look at the main verb in the active voice. Here, for example, the main verb in the active voice is asks. It is in the present simple. Since it is in the present simple, the to be in the passive form will also be in the present simple. It follows the nature of the main verb. So we will have object plus to be in the present simple, since asks is also in the present simple, and then you add the past participle of that verb, the past participle of the verb to ask. So we will have the question is asked by the teacher.